Stroud, and I have a couple of my colleagues here. I have one of our co-owners, which is Jerry Beers. I also have Kelly McNamara, who's in charge of our quality department. And we've been building mobile apps really since the beginning of time. So when Apple released the App Store and gave developers access to the App Store, that's when our company started back in 2008. And we focus pretty solely on building native applications. And we really have, over the last few years, have evolved our business into a couple different units. So we have our core business, which is custom development, but we also have what's evolved into a staffing business. So we're finding that a lot of organizations are in need, dire need of having native iOS resources or native Android resources that come into their business. So our core business, custom applications, that's where we can build everything from the ground up. We do strategy, design, development, project management, testing. A lot of times we get brought into companies in this segment of our business to help with tech incubators or some kind of skunkworks project to build out a new application within a business. We also, in the staffing, we've been evolving that to a point to where originally it was just contract staffing. We would help with contract staffing, but we've started now doing all the traditional staffing pieces. We can do contract to hire, and direct placement. And what we're finding is, in this particular niche in mobile development, the mobile development space, there's tons and tons of IT recruiting companies. I'm sure all of you get pinged daily by all these companies trying to help you gather your resources and place resources. But we're finding that we're able to stay ahead of those in the mobile space because we have the talent and we have the resources to train them, which is our part 3, which we built over the last year. We built this training program and boot camps called Alt-U, or Alternative University. And we do this in several different ways, but we have 3 different levels of training camps that we do. We do iOS Apprentice, iOS Journeyman, iOS Masters, and Custom. And we can do these training courses on-site, remotely, or in a classroom environment. And within these boot camps, we really go beyond just the programming basics. What we find is, there's a lot of people that know how to code, but they don't necessarily know how to work as part of a team. So we train them on agile concepts and using tools and how to work in a team environment. Jerry Beers, who I introduced as one of our co-owners, him and I were actually at Apple. I guess that was in early December. We did an event outside the Washington, D.C. area where we actually did an all-new session, a training session on iOS debugging tips and tricks for business and government entities that were there. And I know during the session it seemed like even the Apple developers that were in the back of the room were taking a lot of notes. I think Jerry might have taught them a thing or two about Xcode there. We brought some handouts from that. If you had developers back at your location and need some information on iOS debugging, we have some handouts that they can pick up back there. The core part of our business, again, is the app development. And at this point, we've built hundreds of apps and released hundreds of apps into the App Store. Over the years, we've picked up some pretty big names. We have companies like American Airlines, Match.com, One Technologies, Tilly's, United Way. These are all companies that we've done development projects with and for. In the audience today, we had some of our clients. We had some folks from One Technologies. We also had American Airlines that was here today. But we've developed a network at this point of hundreds of developers, hundreds of mobile developers that we work with, and really drive the technology. These are developers, designers, quality assurance staff that we can help your business with. One of the things that is really important to us is the native mobile development. And if we look at our experience there, one of the big things that we want to do is give back to the community. So we have Jerry authors tutorials and books and those types of things with BraveWonderland.com, which is a major resource for iOS development. And we want to stay a leader in this space. What happens so often is companies just graze the surface of what you can do with a mobile app. So we tend to stay ahead of that curve and can help companies really innovate in this space. We also have an app that we own that we built called Hours Time Tracking. This application at this point has application that has more advanced features for doing team reporting and data synchronization so that the data is always available anywhere in the world. And it even continues to get quite a bit of press. In December, we had an article written on us in Forbes. And beyond the press, it's really one of those tools that help you as a company, but manage that precious resource, which is time. So enough about us. Let's get to the good stuff. So here is a little bit that we're going to cover on some of the best practices. And by a show of hands, how many of you have customer-facing apps in your business? Maybe half the room. How about enterprise apps? Probably everybody else. Everybody else mostly have enterprise apps. Most organizations these days do have apps. So nearly everybody in the room raised their hands, and that's no wonder. This chart shows how many apps are in the App Store. Believe it or not, it's going to exceed 2.5 million apps in the App Store this year. So it's pretty daunting how many's out there, and if you have customer-facing apps, how many apps that you're maybe competing with. But beyond the customer-facing apps in the App Store, all of you also raise your hands and you have enterprise apps. And enterprise apps are growing at a feverish pace as well. So I attended the Gartner Symposium. Anybody Gartner members? A few hands up going up. One of the things that they said, which was kind of mind-blowing to me, is that the average enterprise now has 8 to 15 apps that they manage for their users. So that number continues to grow. So needless to say, mobile development, is really on an upward trend. And when we get contacted by potential customers, there's kind of two concerns that we typically hear that come in. Number one is you cannot keep up with the pace. Technology is moving so fast. I don't know what iOS is doing. I don't know what Android is doing. And then also the business demands are high. Every business unit is wanting new apps, and I just can't move fast enough with the IT group. The second is it's still hard to find talent, especially in the native mobile space, which we're specializing in. It's getting better, but it's still hard to find talent. So those are a couple things that we help with. Anybody identify with those? Anybody in the app space that kind of identify with those? Yeah. It really makes it difficult to accelerate development when you have these two concerns that are popping up. But it also makes us realize that we have to make mobile a priority. We have to make it a key piece of the business and a critical competency for our business as we go forward. So some tips for building a successful app. I'm going to hit 4 different topics here that we're going to cover, and I'm going to jump into the first one, tips for building a successful app, which is number 1, number 2 are pretty related, but number 1, we got to solve unique problems with the app. The guys from Capriza, they talked about, you have all these large ERP systems, and they do hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things. And within the mobile app, you need to solve unique problems. So often we get requirements that say, build me an app just like what my SAP does. And that's really not a great solution. It's not going to solve a unique problem. It's definitely, on that second part, it's not going to make the life easier for the user. So a mobile app has to be, number 2, it has to be really simple, and it has to be well designed. And you'll hear me talk a lot about design here, because this is we feel this is one of our strengths. It's critical that you design an app that's easy to use and uses the functionality that is there on the phone. Next is make sure you have an app marketing strategy. One of the things that we see, especially on the custom app side, is we have customers come to us and they have an app idea. Sometimes it is literally an app idea on a napkin, and they'll come to us and they'll say, "Here's what we want to build." And we take that idea and we start asking questions like, "Okay, how are you going to sell this? What is your business model? How are you going to monetize the app? How are you going to support the app?" All those questions that you would typically want to answer. And in many cases, it's an afterthought for them. They have an idea, but they haven't thought through the entire business model plan. It's critical both on consumer-facing as well as enterprise apps that you have a plan and you have a marketing strategy on how you're going to get users to utilize that app and make it successful. Now, one of the biggest ways that we've seen success in marketing an app is through connections with the manufacturer of the device. So we have a strong relationship with Apple, and And one of the things that we try to strive to do with new apps that we develop is stay on that cutting edge. So Apple, for instance, if you look at this number 4 here, Apple is always innovating new features in their application, and Google does the same thing on Android. And what happens is we catch their attention if we're able to stay out in front of them. So we generally design apps natively. We generally design apps that follow their standards, and we generally design apps that innovate in that space. So for example, with iOS, there's been things like 3D Touch, and there's been things like Touch ID, there's been things like watch complications, integrating the watch. Those types of technologies, if you integrate them in your apps, you're going to get noticed by both the manufacturer, the device manufacturer, but also by your users. Because the users are going to demand those kind of features within the application. And then another thing, back up on the planning a little bit, is you've got to plan for maintenance. It's not just a checkbox anymore to say, yes, I have a mobile app now. It used to be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, yes, I have an app, and I check that box off. But the app is becoming really mainstream in the business. There's more and more organizations that you're seeing your users in your business that are working more from glass, the iPad, the iPhone, than they are from a traditional PC these days. So it's really important to have a life cycle and a plan for your application. Okay, this is a topic I'm sure we got asked this a half of the times as people were walking by. This is one that we can spend all day on. Native versus hybrid versus platform versus web, and what do you do in different situations? And how many of you know that you build hybrid apps within your business? So you build apps on, web technologies, or you use Xamarin. Yeah, there's all kinds of technologies that you can use to do that. How many of you build native? I actually have iOS developers and Android developers. Only one guy? 2 guys? Okay, there's one. There's really a lot of pieces of information that have to go into making this decision. But here's a little bit of overview. Who in here just says, I don't know, you don't even know what you're talking about, what native versus hybrid? Anybody in that category? Nobody wants to admit it? Here's the high-level overview. So native, it's going to sound real elementary, but native is when you build in the native language on the device. So iOS, that's when you're building in Swift and Objective-C. Android is when you're building in Java or Android Studio. This is called Windows. Anybody develop Windows apps? No. One? Couple? Okay. So Windows, that's where you're using usually Microsoft technologies. And then you got hybrid, which is a couple different options. Primarily, they roll up to open source, which is Cordova, or they roll up to Xamarin, which is Microsoft technologies. And then you have platforms. So you have each of these, which I separated out here, which is kind of a big trend, and this is what Capri's is capturing. But you have these companies, Salesforce, SAP, Oracle, Microsoft, they're all building their own platform templates where you can build apps on top of their solutions. And then you have web, where somebody just says, we're not going to do an app, we're just going to do responsive web. And these are the four different ways you can go about building mobile apps. So this table is an eye chart, and I pulled platform off of here. You can almost put platform in with hybrid in this category, but this shows kind of some pros and cons. And again, there's all kinds of differences of opinion on this, but you'll generally hear our company push for native. And if you look at this chart, the reason we do that is, we feel you can gain a better user experience. You're going to have better access to the device. You're going to have better usability, those types of things with the native application. And we believe over time it pays for itself in overweighs the cost point of it. So most companies that we work with, if they have a customer-facing app, they'll usually do native. They'll choose native, great customer-centric experience. Others that do the enterprise side, still mostly hybrid. And why do you guys think that might be? Accessible on both, yeah. So there's kind of 2 things that we see. One is it's accessible on both. There's some portability. It saves you a little bit on cost initially. But also there's the piece that, we already have web developers. I got guys and girls that know Java, and I have people that know Microsoft technology. So let's just teach them how to do mobile. And that process has worked over the years, and it's went pretty well. But we would argue supporting those solutions. And you also have opportunity costs that you lose by combining the development teams into one. We would typically see most companies, or we're typically seeing today, most companies starting to think about, okay, now I'm ready for my version 2. And I've got to start laying on top of my hybrid application some components that allow me to take advantage of the full native application environment that's there. So we're seeing a lot of companies start to move to that, starting to hire native developers on top of their hybrid solutions today. Next is software development lifecycle best practices. Those that are in the app side of the business, a lot of these will be very familiar. These are kind of buzzwords and points of entry that you have to have in place as a foundation to be able to be successful at app development. But this is where I'm going to talk more about design. A lot of organizations don't realize the significant difference between designing a mobile application and a web application or a desktop application. And it's not just about real estate either, it's about workflows and making the applications easy to use. So when we talk about design, we talk about user experience, really driving into understanding the workflows that need to be done in the application. We talk about user interface and leveraging the key technologies or the human interface guidelines that come from the device manufacturers. We also talk about usability studies and usability testing, making sure that the application is really, really strong from a usability standpoint. Number 2 on this slide is the agile development. The days of big requirements are really over. You have to move fast in mobile. If you don't move fast, the next version of iOS, the next version of Android is going to be out, and you're going to miss the boat on some key features that you can take advantage of. Product backlog, code repo, source control, these are all system level pieces, and there's a lot of companies out there that are trying to integrate all of these, but those need to be integrated systems for source control, repo, backlog, all that needs to work seamlessly together. And then beyond that, you start to advance in the mobile space, you can start to do more advanced branching, so you can have multi-team members working on applications. You can also start to implement code reviews. You can also start to implement automated tests so that you can be more effective in delivering your applications to the marketplace. Automated tests, that includes unit testing if your developers right, that includes automated UI tests if maybe your QA team's right, but it's really making the application more stable so that you can release more quickly. And a lot of companies are not quite there yet, but if you get into this piece, you can really start to move the application into the marketplace very, very quickly. And then last on this slide is the estimation and time tracking. I'm sure everybody tries to track time somehow at some task level to figure out how fast you're moving. It's critical that you have estimation in place and you have tools to be able to track at the task and project level how you're doing so you can develop a velocity of how quick you can move through the development cycle. And this is the last topic I'm going to touch on, staffing. Staffing is an interesting piece, especially in mobile development and app development in general. CNN Money just released this, the #1 best job in America is a mobile developer last year. You also have in this space the #2 job posting last year on Career Builder, software developer. You also have in this space more developers, development jobs being posted each year than developers are graduating from college. So you have this unique situation where developers have a ton of opportunity in the marketplace. And again, from that earlier slide, they're hard to find. Developers are, the day of the developer, working on a mainframe or a desktop application for 10, 20, 30 years is really gone. And it's important to understand the needs of the new developer that's coming out of school today and being developed in the marketplace today. They like to be challenged, right? They like to work in a fast-paced environment. They like to have complex problems to solve. They have to have interesting work. They want to learn new things. They got to have some flexibility. There's all these pieces that these developers need. And I think it's important to understand that in the marketplace. And I think that's why some of our staffing and recruiting pieces have been so successful is because we've been able to take software developers and give them challenging products with multiple customers over time. So sometimes it's an interesting dynamic. Who uses outsourced staffing for some of their application development? Everybody's hands goes up. It's kind of an interesting dynamic with, you know, your core staff that's developing your applications, because those tend to innovate more, because there's new ideas coming in, and we're not always doing things the way what's that saying, doing things the way we've always been doing them. So staffing is a critical component of having a successful development team. So that's it on my time. Again, Jeremy Stroud from 5-Pack Creative. I've got Jerry and Kelly here. We have a cool set of AirPods back there. If you haven't registered for those, we're going to give those away later today. And if you ever need any